What's up guys, it's Eric from Hurricane, and today we are back with a new Crimson Invasion deck profile for you, and this time it's going to be Buzzwole GX with Garbodor. And this is actually the same deck that we featured in our recent testing rounds video, so if you want to see this deck in action, I'll be sure to have a link in the description for you guys to check that one out as well. So yeah, Buzzwole GX is probably I'd say the most playable new card that came out of Crimson Invasion, so there's a lot of excitement around it to see what people can pair with it. And so yeah, we're trying out Garbodor with it, and we have some other tricks in here as well. So let's take a look at it and see what it's all about. So first off, this is a Buzzwole deck. So we have 3 Buzzwole GX, of course. It's one of the new Ultra Beasts that came out of Crimson Invasion. And so these are just Japanese proxies, so I don't know the actual attack names off the top of my head. But its first attack for a single fighting energy does 30. And 30 damage to one of your opponent's bench Pokemon. So just like the old Hammerhead attack that was on Landorus EX back in the day. So finally got a reprint. Definitely an amazing attack. In this format, since there's so many evolving basics, you know, you have Ralts, you have Alolan Vulpix, Beldums, Rowlets, etc. So an attack like this in a format where there's a lot of 50, 60, 70 hit point basics is very, very strong. So that's going to be kind of what we are basing the deck around, is going to be this first attack, but there are some other attacks that are worth mentioning. So its second attack for 3 fighting energy does 160, and Buzzwole can't attack on your next turn. And its GX move for the same attack cost is 40 times the amount of prize cards that you have left. So everything on this card, pretty strong. But like I said, we are basing most of the deck around this first attack. We're going to be trying to just tank hits and, you know, set up knockouts on our opponent's board. So, yep, 190 hit points, also pretty strong on a basic. The one big downside to it, though, it is psychic weak. So that means things like Espeon GX and Garbodor are going to be able to make quick work of this guy. So it's very important that we build the deck around that and make sure that we have some ways to deal with those types of matchups if possible. So in order to do that, one of the things we're playing is going to be 2 copies of Zygarde EX. It's going to be kind of an alternate attacker, has a very similar style of play. You know, we're trying to abuse this 1 energy attack that Zygarde has. So we're playing this one, 190 hit points, also very strong, has grass weakness instead. So that means if you are going against something like an Espeon or a Garbodor, you can kind of switch gears and play this guy instead. Or alternatively, if your opponent doesn't have many low HP evolving basics, sometimes Zygarde is just better in that type of matchup anyways. But yeah, so we're looking to abuse Land's Pulse. It does 20 plus 20 more if there is a Stadium card in play. So with Zygarde, and also I forgot to mention with Buzzwole, you can abuse things like Choice Band and Strong Energy to really rack up those numbers and push that damage to a high count. So that's the main attack we are looking to abuse. But there are still some other decent attacks on Zygarde. Cellstorm for a fighting and color rust is 60, and you heal 30 from this Pokemon. So a nice little tanking attack. And like I said, if you have a Choice Band, Strong Energy, or some other damage modifiers, you can really push the numbers of these attacks much higher. And then Land's Wrath for 2 fighting and color rust just kind of does a vanilla 100 damage. If you're going to commit 3 energy to one of these guys, Buzzwole I definitely think is the stronger route to go, but you do have the option with Zygarde if you choose to as well. But yeah, so like I said, Zygarde mainly there just to give us some better type coverage. Then we're also playing 1 Regirock EX. We're really just playing it for this Regi Power ability and make sure fighting Pokemon other than Regirock EX do 10 damage more to each of your opponent's Pokemon. So this is actually kind of relevant in certain matchups because Choice Band doesn't really help again in the early turns before your opponents evolve. So let's say you're going against a Garbodor deck, just for example, and you have a Buzzwole. So normally just with 1 energy you do 30 damage, but if you have a Regirock in play, that'll boost you up to 40, and if you have a Strong Energy, that'll boost you up to 60 damage, being able to knock out evolving basics. So if you have Regirock or Fighting Fury Belt with a Strong Energy, you can knock out these low HP basics. So just a damage modifier to help us hit the numbers that we need to. And next up, the other key component of the deck is going to be a 2-2 Garbodor line. So we're playing Garbodor for this Garbotoxin ability. As long as it has a tool card attached to it, you shut off abilities for both players. And this is pretty decent because other than Regirock and Tapu Lele, we really are reliant on any abilities. Like we use Lele basically just to get set up, but you know, our attackers don't really care if abilities are shut off. But the main reason I think Garbodor is going to be important is because there's one card in the format that really deters, not deters, but really diminishes the value of Buzzwole GX. That's going to be Mr. Mime. Prevents bench damage, and that's kind of partially what makes Buzzwole so good. So having an answer to Mr. Mime for these setup decks, because at the time of filming, I'm expecting setup decks like Garbodor, just as an example, to start playing Mime as a way to deal with Buzzwole, just because I am kind of predicting Buzzwole to be a popular card. So it's important we can shut that off. Alolan Muck is also an option, but I really don't think you gain anything from that. I think Garbodor is just overall stronger. But yeah, so definitely pretty strong to shut off Mr. Mime, and also most decks in the format are very ability-based. So it's just a nice little disruptive ability that we have to work with. I think one option as well we aren't playing in here is playing one Trash Range Garbodor. You can change a couple of your fighting energies to rainbows and go that route. We actually had that idea messaged to us by one of our viewers, so shout out to them. I forget their name at the time of filming, so I do apologize, but I thought that was a neat idea as well that we might want to try out. So 2/2 Garbodor line, then one Espeon EX as well. It's going to be another key card in this deck, so we're playing it for Miraculous Shine. De-evolve each of your opponent's highest stage Pokemon and put them back into their hand. So with this deck, we are playing the Buzzwoles to, you know, put a bunch of damage on our opponent's field. We also play Potown in the list, which we'll get to shortly. So all these different things, we can set up knockouts to you know, knock our opponent out with Miraculous Shine. So if you just do 2 of Buzzwole's first attacks against, let's just say, a Gardevoir deck, you know, that's going to be 60 damage on 2 different routes. And if your opponent rare candies in a Gardevoir, you can just de-evolve them that way and take knockouts. So definitely very, very good against these rare candy-based decks. And then the last Pokemon we're going to be playing is going to be 3 copies of Tapu Lele, of course, just for that Wonder Tag ability. Search your deck for a supporter card, put it into your hand. So next up, going on to our trainer cards, we're playing 4 copies of Professor Sycamore, 4 copies of N, kind of the standard draw supporters of this format. Next up, we are playing 4 copies of Guzma, so allowing us to choose what we want to take knockouts on. And all of our Pokemon have a pretty big retreat cost, so having a way to get out of the active spot is going to be good. And one reason I am opting to play a 4th copy of Guzma is because this deck is incredibly aggressive, and I like being able to have very aggressive Guzma plays. So just there for a little bit of extra aggression, and like I said, everything in this deck kind of retreats very awkwardly. So the 4th copy kind of helps with that as well. And so next up we have 2 copies of Acerola. Put 1 of your damaged Pokemon, all cards attached to it, back into your hand. So in this deck, we're kind of just aiming to tank hits and just set up knockouts with these, you know, 1 energy efficient attackers like Zygarde and Buzzwole. So, you know, whenever your opponent swings on you, you can just Acerola it up and heal off all the damage. So especially with Garbodor, that prevents things like Volcanion from taking 1-hit knockouts on you. You know, when you're a 1 energy attacker, so things like Gardevoir can't really one-shot you. Metagross, for example, even with a Choice Band, they can't one-shot you since you have 190 hit points. So Acerola just helps you deny knockouts and just tank hits a little bit longer. And the last supporters that we're going to be playing is going to be 1 copy of Bridget, but then also 1 copy of Pokemon Fan Club as well. So Bridget, you guys are probably familiar with. You get 3 basics out of your deck, put them on your bench, or 1 basic EX, which is normally great most of the time. But with this deck, you know, sometimes, like I mentioned, Buzzwole is not your ideal attacker you want to go with, and sometimes it's preferable to actually lead the game with Zygarde instead. So Fan Club gives you the option to grab maybe like a Zygarde and a Trubbish, or maybe like a Regirock and a Trubbish, or something like that instead, just because Bridget is just very poor at searching out Regirock and Zygarde. So next up we have 4 copies of Ultra Ball, pretty standard. 4 copies of Floatstone, because everything in this deck is monstrous, and it helps us activate Garbotoxin as long as there's a tool card attached to it. And the rest of our tool cards are playing 2 copies of Fighting Fury Bell and 3 copies of Choice Band. This is something that's very much in progress. I haven't really decided which route I want to go. Just because Fighting Fury Bell is definitely very, very good at ensuring we can keep tanking hits and we don't get knocked out in 1 hit. Also good, like I mentioned too, in the early game before decks like Gardevoir or Metagross might evolve, Fury Belt in combination with Strong Energy or Regirock can really make sure that you can take one-hit knockouts on those low HP evolving basics. But of course, Choice Band's also great because we get a hit for a much higher amount of damage. In the late game, Choice Band can be good. So in the example, again, I'm just going to use Garbodor as an example. If our opponent has a fresh Garbodor GX, if we attack with Buzzwole GX with a Choice Band, we're going to basically already set it up for a Miraculous Shine de-evolution play. So I think both tools have their merit. I'm not sure if the deck should play one or the other just yet. I definitely think it's something that you'll have to play around with and that will need further testing. But right now I'm going for the split, kind of ensuring we have an option for either type of deck that we might run into. So next up we're playing 3 Po-Town. I mentioned this briefly earlier. Whenever an evolution is played from a player's hand, they put 3 damage counters on that Pokemon. So that in combination with Buzzwole, like I mentioned, or even Zygarde for that matter, can really help you set up these de-evolution knockouts. And also Zygarde does need a Stadium card in play to get that extra 20 damage boost, so Po-Town helps fulfill that role as well. Next up we have 2 copies of Field Blower to discard tools and Stadium cards in play, mainly to get rid of things like our opponent's Choice Bands and things that they would use to help knock out our Pokemon in one hit. We need to prevent that and try to tank as long as we can. And the last trainer card playing is 1 copy of Rescue Stretcher, just for a little bit of recovery. And I've seen some decks opt to go the Max Elixir route, and if you do decide to play that, I might consider switching this over to a Super Rod, just to ensure your consistencies with that. But since we're not playing Max Elixirs, we're just gonna go for Rescue Stretcher, since we don't have to worry about energy being in our deck as badly. And speaking of energy, we have 4 Strong Energy, that awesome special energy card. It makes your fighting Pokemon do 20 more damage and provides a fighting energy. So this is really important, like I've mentioned various times, to help hit the numbers that we need to take knockouts. And then we're also playing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 copies of fighting energy, just to, you know, help ensure that we can hit those whenever we need to as well. So yeah guys, that's going to be our first attempt at a Buzzwole GX deck. And if you guys aren't familiar with the testing rounds videos that we upload, these lists that we have are normally kind of our rough starting points for testing. So there very well may be things in this list that we can actually improve and change. So something to keep in mind. But definitely I think one of the most exciting decks to come out of Crimson Invasion. There's actually not too many, I don't think. But this is definitely, I think, the biggest new archetype that people should expect going forward. So yeah guys, I hope you enjoyed this look at Buzzwole GX. Let us know below in the comments too. What do you guys think of this? Do you think this archetype will be any good? Are there any things in this list you would change? Definitely let us know. And also our Stage 2 patrons over on our Patreon will actually have access to a brief article detailing some additional text and other deck building options for this deck. So if you want to learn how to access that, I will have a link in the description as well. But yeah guys, as usual, feel free to like and subscribe, and a big shout out to all of our supporters over on Patreon. If you want to join the Candy crew over there and help support our channel, it's patreon.com/rarecandytcg, or if you could pick up something from our online store at rarecandytcg.com, that would also be greatly appreciated. But with that, I appreciate you watching, and we'll see you for the next one.